Hi guys, it's Tristan from World English School, and today I'm going to read you a book called... That's not the name of it. This is it. Curious George Rides a Bike. And I haven't read this one before. I don't know if the man in the yellow hat is in it or not. But yeah, I'm in a beautiful area. Take a look at this. I'm in a big field. And so I thought, and I came here on the bicycle. It's my bicycle, so I'm gonna, yeah, I thought it would be a good chance to read this book to you. So let's begin. Here's Curious George Rides a Bike by H.A. Rey. He's the same guy who did Curious George with his wife, Margaret Rey. All right, let's take a look. This was published in 1952. It's an older book. I bet a lot of your parents weren't born in 1952. What do you think? My dad was born in 1954. That's before my dad was born. This is George. He lived with his friend, the man with the yellow hat. He was a good little monkey and always very curious. This morning, George was curious at the moment he woke up because he knew it was a special day. What kind of day do you think it was? Probably something to do with the bike, right? Let's find out. Oh, the man in the yellow hat is here. At breakfast, George's friend said, "Today, we are going to celebrate because just 3 years ago this day, I brought you home with me from the jungle. So tonight, I'll take you to the animal show. But first, I have a surprise for you." Of course, it's the bicycle, right? He took George out to the yard where a big box was standing. George was very curious. What does it say on there? Handle with care and express. So it was a special delivery, huh? You ever get a special delivery before? Oh wow, look at this. Out of the box came a bicycle. George was delighted. That's what he had always wanted. He knew how to ride a bicycle, but he had never had one of his own. "I must go now," said the man, "but I'll be back in time for the show. Be careful with your new bike and keep close to the house while I am gone." Do you think George is going to do that? Look at that car. That car is from the 1950s. You ever seen a car from the 50s before? Like the old style. George could ride very well. He could even do all sorts of tricks. Monkeys are good at that, of course. For instance, he could ride this way with both hands off the handlebar, like that. And he could ride this way, like a cowboy on a wild bronco. And he could also ride backwards. But after a while, George got tired of doing tricks, and what do you think? I think he crashed. What do you think? Did he crash? Nope, he didn't crash. What do you think he did? He went out onto the street. Let me get the book here. The newsboy was just passing by with his bag full of papers. "It's a fine bike you have there," he said to George. "How would you like to help me deliver the papers?" Morning Star is the paper name. He handed George the bag and told him to do one side of the street first and then turn back and do the other side. George was very proud as he rode off with his bag. There's George with the bag, about to do the newspaper. Look at the airplane. Kind of a big plane. It's a propeller plane, 4 propellers. All sorts of things out here. He started to deliver the papers on one side of the street as he had been told. When he came to the last house, he saw a little river in the distance. George was curious. He wanted to know what the river was like. So instead of turning back to deliver the rest of the papers, he just went on. It sounds like me on the bicycle. Today I came on this bicycle here and I came a long way and I just keep going. This is what I do when I've got a day off. Curious George does this every day. There was a lot to see at the river. A man was fishing from the bridge. A duck family was paddling downstream and 2 boys were playing with their boats. George would have liked to stop and look at the boats, but he was afraid the boys might find out that he had not delivered all the papers, so he rode on. He You think they really would have known? Well, George thinks that they would have. While riding along, George kept thinking of boats all the time. It would be such fun to have a boat, but how could he get one? He thought and he thought, and then he had an idea. He got off the bicycle, took a newspaper out of the bag and began to fold it. First, he folded down the corners like this. What's he gonna do you think? I think I know. It's either a paper hat or a boat. Which one do you think he's making? Probably a boat, right? But it could also be a hat. Look, it shows all the directions. You ever made one of these before? Then he folded both edges up, brought the ends together, and flattened it sidewise. Then he turned one corner up, then the other one. Again, brought the ends together and flattened it sidewise. Then gently he pulled the ends open, like that. Let's see. And there was his boat. Also a hat. Now the moment had come to launch the boat. Would it float? It did. So George decided to make some more boats. Finally, he had used up all the papers and had made so many boats that he could not count them. Whole fleet. Uh-oh. That's not good. Curious George likes to get in trouble. Oh my goodness, look at this. Watching his fleet sailing down the river, George felt like an admiral. But watching his fleet, he forgot to watch where he was going. Look at all these ducks. They got in the boats too. There's some butterflies on there, bugs on there. And then of course George crashes, doesn't he? He has to crash. He's Curious George. Suddenly there was a terrible jolt. The bicycle had hit a rock and George flew off the seat, head first. Luckily George was not hurt, but the front wheel of the bicycle was all out of shape and the tire was blown out. Like that. Has it ever happened to you on a bicycle before? Happened to me on this bicycle before. It's not a good thing. George tried to ride the bicycle, but of course it wouldn't go. Man. So he started carrying it, but it soon got too heavy. George did not know what to do. His new bike was spoiled, and the newspapers were gone. He wished he had listened to his friend and kept close to the house. Now he just stood there and cried. Oh. Suddenly his face brightened. Why, he had forgotten that he could ride on one wheel. Remember, like the Bronco? He tried it and it worked. He had hardly started out again when he saw something. Again? What did he see this time, man? He's always seeing something, isn't he? It's crazy. The book gets crazier. Look at this. He had never seen before. He saw something he had never seen before. Rolling toward him came an enormous tractor with huge trailers behind it. Look at that. Looking out of the trailers were all sorts of animals. To George, it looked like a zoo on wheels. The tractor stopped. And 2 men jumped out. Well, well, said one of the men, a little monkey who can ride a bike. Bronco fashion. We could use you in our animal show tonight. I am the director of the show, and this is Bob. It's Bob. He can straighten your wheel and fix that flat in no time, and then we'll take you along to the place where the show is going to be. Are these good guys? Are they really trying to help George? Looks like it. Maybe they are good guys. So the 3 of them got into the cab and drove off. Maybe you could play a fanfare while you ride your bike in the show, the director said. I have a bugle for you right here, and later on you'll get a green coat and a cap just like Bob's. Which one's the director? That's the director right there. And that's Bob. I see. Bob's the worker guy, the fix-it man. The animals look happy. They're smiling in the pictures, so I guess it's a good circus. On the showgrounds, everybody was getting busy, getting things ready for the show. I must do some work now, said the director. Meanwhile, you may have a look around and get acquainted with all of the animals. But you must not feed them, especially the ostrich, because he will eat anything and might get very sick afterwards. There he is showing George around. All sorts of stuff going on here. Yeah, the animals are all smiling. Nice. Man, there's a lot of animals. I'm counting how many? 10 of them almost? Wow. George was curious. Of course he was curious. Would the ostrich would the ostrich really eat anything? He wouldn't eat a bugle, or would he? There's a bugle right there. George went a little closer to the cage, and before he knew it, the ostrich had snatched the bugle and tried to swallow it. But a bugle is hard to swallow, even for an ostrich. It got stuck in his throat. Funny sounds came out of the bugle, and the ostrich was struggling with it, all blue in the face. Look at that. Got stuck in the ostrich's throat. George was frightened. Oh, man. Of course, George is going to get in trouble, right? I hope they can get it out of the ostrich's throat. Look at this. Fortunately, the men had heard the noise. They came rushing to the cage, and got the bugle out of the ostrich's throat, just in time. Fortunately, huh? The director was very angry with George. "We cannot use little monkeys who don't do as they're told," he said. "Of course you cannot take part in the show now. We will have to send you home." George had to sit on a bench all by himself, and nobody even looked at him. He was terribly sorry for what he had done, but now it was too late. He had spoiled everything. Poor guy, but what do you think? Was it the right thing to punish him like that? I don't know. What do you think? But he feels bad. Meanwhile, the ostrich, always hungry, had got hold of a string dangling near his cage. Right here. This happened to be the string which held the door to the cage of the baby bear. As the ostrich nibbled at it, the door opened and the baby bear got out. Ooh. He ran away as fast as he could. On two legs, look, he runs like a monkey. And made straight for a high tree near the camp. Baby bears love to climb. Nobody had seen it but George, and George was not supposed to leave his bench. But this was an emergency. So he jumped up, grabbed the bugle, and blew as loud as he could. Then he rushed to his bicycle. The men had heard the alarm and thought at first that George had been naughty again. But when they saw the empty cage and the ostrich nibbling at the string, they knew what had happened. So they believed George. And George got off the bench and was running after the monkey. But I guess they're okay with it now, because they know what happened. George raced toward the tree far ahead of the men. By now, the bear had climbed quite high, and this was dangerous because little bears can climb up a tree easily, but coming down is much harder. That's true, isn't it? You ever seen a baby bear climb a tree? They can really get up there, but it is hard to come down. They may fall and get hurt. The men were worried. They did not know how to get him down safely, but George had his plan. Of course, monkeys can climb. With the bag over his shoulder, he went up the tree as fast as only a monkey can. And when he reached the baby bear, there he is climbing up to get baby bear. And when he reached baby bear, he put him in his bag and carefully let him down so that the men could catch him safely. Everybody cheered when George had come down from the tree. "You are a brave little monkey," said the director. "You saved the baby bear's life. Now you'll get your coat back. And of course you may ride your bike and play the bugle in the show." Oh, he was allowed to go back because he saved the baby bear. That's nice. Finally, the show was on. The whole town had come to see it, and how surprised they were to discover George on his bike right in the middle of the show. The newsboy was there too, and also the man with the yellow hat. Everybody heard about it, huh? The man in the yellow hat, who had been looking for George everywhere, was happy to have found him at last. The newsboy was glad to have his bag again, and the people from the other side of the street whose papers George had made into boats were not angry with him anymore. Oh, look, the man in the yellow hat says, "George!" When the time had come for George to say goodbye, the director let him keep the coat and the cap and the bugle. And then George and his friend got into the car and went. Went where? Where do you think? Where do you think they went? I think I know. Ah, nice. Home. Well, hope you enjoyed that. I did very much. This is called Curious George Rides a Bike. And should we look around a little bit? This is the area I'm in. I've got the camera on a stick here. And let's see. Can I see what's going on? Look at that. Beautiful, isn't it? There's a fire over here. Do you see that over there? There's a farmer having a fire, burning some brush. And I passed a museum over there. And this is the Kashima River. And it's a big river area, as you can see. And these are all rice fields here. So, and it's a nice place to be, nice air. So anyway, I hope that you enjoyed, and thanks for watching Curious George Rides a Bike. See you next time. Bye-bye.